you should be able to, access that. We do have some people in person today, as well as most of you online. So please bear with us as we do try to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to speak. We know sometimes it's hard to hear those online, but we'll do our, or hear those in person, but we will do our best to try to make it work really well for all of us. Again, I always like to start this by saying that this is a focus group, so we do have an agenda, but please feel free to add topics, anything you'd like as we move along through the agenda. This is driven by our partners and you know, your actual practitioners of the program, and we really like to hear from you directly in a more informal manner than in a public meeting, you know, what you see that needs to work, other partners, what you'd like to see added, just really to get your feedback. So again, we'll follow this agenda, but please feel free to add additional topics as needed. I did mention last time that we would start out. Oh, please use the raise your hand function if you could, in order to make a comment. It kind of just with kind of a mixture of those online and offline, it kind of makes it a little bit easier. So if you could do that, that would be great. And then one of us will call on you to speak. Last time I mentioned we didn't get to supportive services, so we will go ahead and start with everybody's favorite topic, supportive service, this time. We made a lot of changes to supportive services last year, changing the point structure, making it so that there were different options. You didn't have to have as many supportive services by changing those point structures, trying to put them more in line with the actual cost of the the cost of the service. And we are continuing to work on looking at those numbers, but we'd like to hear from those who either use the supportive services or developers on what you give us some feedback on the supportive service structure right now. No hands?
I don't see any hands.
We all love them. Don't ever change them. Okay, we're going to continue to take a close look at supportive services. Again, just we've had comments at past focus group meetings about the cost of them to the development. So we are aware of that, and the ongoing operating cost of them to the development. So we are aware of that, and we'll continue to keep a close eye on making sure that we're trying to find a good balance there for the developments, and providing services, but at the same time not creating too much of an undue burden on the development. I would invite you to please, if you can think of a supportive service that you would like to see added to the list, we'd love to have your ideas. So please feel free to share any ideas, via email or however, conversation. It doesn't matter. Feel free to just reach out and give us any ideas. Talk a little bit about our tactic success rate. In 22-23, we really focused on the board's priorities, as well as those lining up with the NIFA vision and goals and visions. So what we've done is really focused on some certain aspects and of trying to get towards the board's goals. So one of those items was leverage and collaboration. We had fairly good success on leverage and collaboration the first in 2022. And then in 2023, we saw not quite as much participation or people asking for points in that area. We would like to hear, and we have heard from some of you in the past, so I understand you may not have additional comments, but if you do have anything, we'd love to hear about your comments on the leverage and collaboration. Again, that was one of the board's major goals, is to try to encourage leverage and collaboration of different resources, community resources, just to really have a lot of layering of funds if necessary from the community and besides just NIFA and the DED. Any comments? Darren, you're unmuted. Did you have any comments? Tam, anyone in the room have any comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, well, it showed that I was unmuted, but I was actually muted. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
One point of clarification on the existing language. In one place it talks about, eligible sources, not including those with that identity of interest, including development partners. And then in another section, it talks about eligible resources, capital contributions, including those from development partners. So, if you could at least just clarify that in the language for the next round, whether it will be or not be, or what, seems to conflict right now.
Noted. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any feedback on the collaboration piece and leverage?
I'll have another comment. The current language does not include, it uses examples of city home, CDBG, TIF, LB 840 does not, LB 840 includes ARPA, but ARPA from where? There's NIFA ARPA, there's city ARPA, there's legislative ARPA. So just maybe, and that's in the initial QAP forum, I just mentioned making it as broad as possible, because if everybody's shooting for the 20%, that's a lot of money on a big deal. So keeping it open. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, one of the other major focuses of the board was to encourage development of housing in greater Nebraska. So one of the tactics was to give points to developers who are willing to develop outside of our three, what we consider metro MSAs, which is Omaha, Lincoln, and then South Sioux City MSA. So we had a lot of participation in this, both in 22 and 23. In 22, we had not quite as many, but then in 2023, there were all but a couple that were able to access points in this area. Does anybody have any comments on that? Clarifications, changes, anything that you need to see to move forward, or any changes you'd like to see?
Sarah, this is Rob. I have one on that. I guess I would just maybe clarify it. What communities qualify for that? I think it's under 10,000, if I remember correctly. And I'm just thinking like a Ralston, Nebraska, that is under 10,000, that is completely surrounded by Omaha, La Vista. Is that really the intent of that, or should it be more rural communities than maybe a bedroom community of Omaha or Lincoln?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. The next, oh, Chris, Glenn, you look like you're unmuted. Did you have a comment? Okay. The next category was community housing initiatives. Again, this was to, in those rural areas or non-metro areas, to illustrate what a community was doing, other housing initiatives other than the tax credit application. So what else were they doing in the community to further affordable housing or housing in general in their community? We had 100% participation in this. Most all of the applications that were in, came in, were able to demonstrate that the communities they were working on were also had other active projects that they were doing on a community level. Does anybody have any comments about that before we move on? I can tell this is number 3 because a lot of you that I've heard from before are not, you don't have a lot to say this time. So I'm sure that'll change as we move on. But the waiver of qualified contracts, again, that goes towards code, section 42 code, which encourages us to incentivize serving the lowest income of people for the longest period of time. So that waiver of qualified contracts was a tool, and most everyone took advantage of that. If there's any comments on that or questions or clarifications that you think need to be made, please feel free to speak up, since we don't have everyone. We don't have enough issues, I think, that we'll have people talking over each other. Okay, areas of high opportunity. A great focus of the board this year was wanting to ensure development in areas of high opportunity. We've had several discussions about the measurements of high opportunity and what exactly that is. It looks different for metro than it does for non-metro. But does anybody have additional comments regarding, we've heard data diversity kids is not necessarily what everyone wants to see, although after many discussions, we don't know what is the perfect answer. But we're definitely going to, we're continuing to look at different measurements that we can. Again, data diversity kids talk not only just about education, but other opportunities as far as, access to medical care, access to, grocery stores, things like that. So it's not just, yes, there's an education piece, but it's not just all about kids. It's about things that would affect any family, whether it's a senior family or, a single adult or a family with children. So it's kind of an overall metric, but we'd love to hear comments if you have anything additional to say about that.
Well, Sarah,
Oh,
somebody else.
go ahead,
talking.
Matthew.
Okay. I'd made the comment about seniors, so maybe that's been discussed further since. And that's not necessarily just about data for kids. So I think that did illustrate that point. But I would be interested to know what kind of data supports outcome differences for seniors, because like I said, my comment, I think our seniors do very, very well in the community in which they live. And I think that's difficult to quantify. Obviously, yeah, I mean, the food desert issues of North Omaha are hindrance to them. The healthcare opportunities, healthcare, although a lot of qualified healthcare providers are in the area. So that compared to social network and all those other benefits. So I think for the senior population, from what we've seen, this is an area of high opportunity, an area that they really prefer to stay in. So our senior projects, I think, are just as successful from social outcome perspective as somewhere in higher income neighborhoods.
Thank you. I mean, it is understood that people don't always want to move from their neighborhood, especially if you're a senior. You may not, you're right, you may not want to move. We did this last year, we had kind of a mix of the high opportunity. The high opportunity areas and the those applications that were awarded in the high opportunity areas and those that were not. It was definitely a mixture this last year. And of course, I can't pull that up right now because that would be super handy if I had it in front of me, but I don't. So, we found some success meeting the board's goals, but there were some that were awarded that were not in areas of high opportunity. But we really appreciate the comments on this. Was there someone else who was speaking
Yes.
to?
Rob,
Okay,
Yes.
great.
I would just say, I mean, I think at least in like Lincoln, it's pushed projects into, the higher economic opportunity areas. I think Omaha's pushed some into those areas. I guess my only concern is that the data on there is almost 7-8 years old now. I've emailed them and they said they're in the process of updating, but when that is, I don't know. That was actually probably 9 months ago. But I think finding something with maybe more updated data than, and maybe it's this website, but if they can update it or when it gets updated, but I think having more updated data would be more impactful.
Thank you.
And this is Jake, Hoppy from Hoppy Development. I just continue to, I think there's always going to be a gravity. Well, how would I couch this? I think and then we made the comment before, there was a nice variety and you've set up a nice tension between being able to do a project in an area of high opportunity and still being able to do projects in qualified census tracts where, the projects I think that are getting done in qualified census tracts or historic high poverty areas are those that are, really especially supportive or, demonstrate some high level of collaboration with the community. And so I guess it just I would hate to see the gravity pull back from some of the areas of high opportunity because there are such inherent challenges of going outside of the qualified census tracts to get projects done that continue to support just needs to outweigh the natural gravity of the programs that reward, execution in qualified census tracts.
Thank you. Anyone else? On the non-metro side, we took a different angle. We did not use the same scoring metrics, and instead we talked about locations to services. We've had comments about the radius and things like that, but does anyone else have any comments regarding those metrics on the rural side or on the non-metro side?
Sarah, I didn't have one on the non-metro side. Sorry, I jumped in a little late and I was trying to pull up to see if this was included in the newer QAP, but one of the other things in terms of access to high opportunity is also just the thinking that we're all supporting projects that are along transit lines, because that distance to transit also allows for a lot more opportunity to whatever it is that you need specifically to have access to. So I just wanted to encourage that priority as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, for those of you who maybe aren't part of this process every single year or every other year now, I guess, this part, we do not have a draft out yet. This is what the focus groups are what we do just to get feedback from the last couple of years. And then we will put together a draft and then have official public meetings after that for comment. So this is just our information, more of a casual information gathering section for us so that we really, can hear from our partners and community members about what they see as a need. And then we'll go back to the drawing table and make changes to the QAP. So we appreciate all those comments. Thank you. Another big, first of all, anybody else before we move on?
Yeah, Sarah, I just want to make one other kind of to add to what Jake was getting at. You get out of the QCTs, you're less eligible, at least in the metro in Omaha, for example, for things like CDBG, home, TIF. So you're benefiting in some ways, but you're limiting your ability to put some funds together to pay for those things.
Thank you. And one of the other focuses this year, or well, in our last QAB from our board, was to encourage family development and at the same time encourage that transition from family rental to eventual home ownership. As you know, we have the Crown program through NIFA, which is the long-term rent to own piece of credits, because of the tax credit program, the you have to have a minimum of 15 years where the development is held by the owner. So you know, we don't have a traditional route to home ownership with tax credits, but definitely the board wanted to look at different ways that we can encourage that development. Families, first of all, building housing for larger families, and then offering supportive services that focused on, again, that transition to possible transition to home ownership for those who are interested or would like the support to do that. Is there any comments on that? We really, as in terms of our success rate, we did have in our family, we had a lot of senior developments in 2023 that applied, and most of them that were awarded were senior developments in 2023. I think all but 2 out of our developments were senior, but those 2 family developments did, or those 2, not family necessarily, but those 2 traditional multifamily developments did take advantage of the family development points. Which in this QAP were you were incentivized for building units 4 units and larger. We've had a lot of feedback. Some communities, we've heard from some folks in Omaha that it's really important, and those 4 bedrooms are really, those larger units are really needed. We've heard from some housing authorities that that's not necessarily the case, that puts challenges with vouchers, but if anyone has additional feedback, we'd love to hear about your comments, concerns, or suggestions.
Sarah, this is Claire Vandereyk. I'm with Schaefer Richardson. We're out of Minnesota, and I'm fairly new to the Nebraska space in general. But I think one comment and thought I had on that area is maybe tranching out the points for family sized. One of the reasons that I didn't pursue that was because the percentage in order to hit those points, my unit count just took such a major hit, and I'm already quite limited in my unit count overall because of the bonding limit. So I'm kind of, I would to be taking such a major hit in my overall unit count that the pro forma just didn't work. So I wonder if there's a way to maybe you know, do a 1, 2, 3 point option where, because I think that based on my experience in the state of Minnesota and in the Midwest in general, we are seeing a lack of quality of family-sized affordable housing, and the conversations I have with folks about that. And in my projects, in my experience, those units at the 4, even 5 bedroom, but particularly even 2 and 3s, they go the fastest. That's the ones that our households at that level are looking for. So I absolutely want to pursue those opportunities, but it's a balancing act to make sure that I still have enough units to be able to make the project feasible.
Thank you, Claire. Anyone else have any comments? Okay. Urban versus rural, or what we say is metro versus non-metro. This year we made some pretty large changes to how we look at the scoring for metro versus non-metro. In the past, we compared metro projects against other metro projects and non-metro projects against other non-metro projects, but whoever got the highest score is how we would award the developments, right? Or how we would recommend the development. It was completely score-based with no, we would never skip over a metro if to get what we try to reach a 50-50 balance of our remaining allocation after the crane set aside is taken out. So we've been pretty lopsided for many years, where the metro project would just, you know, rise a little bit higher to the top. So getting to that 50-50 split was something that we weren't consistently able to do. And it was getting more and more lopsided. So this last, in the last QAP, we actually separated it out, and we would, you know, take the highest scoring. And if that was the metro, we started on the metro side, and then we'd go and take the highest scoring non-metro, and then the second in the metro, and then the third in the non-metro. And we used credit, not projects or not units, but we used credit, so that we were keeping, again, it's a 50-50 balance on the credit amount. So we were trying to keep to get to that 50-50 set aside a little bit better. And I think we did see a really big improvement this year in doing that. We'd had definitely closer to our 50-50 split than we'd been in a while. The other thing we did, and this is the very first year we've done it, but we did designated ranked alternates, so that in case credits were returned, we were able to go on to the next designated ranked alternate. You know, this year there were still some COVID extensions and things like that, so we haven't had an opportunity to go to those designated ranked alternates, but it's definitely something that we're looking forward to in the future in case you know, something comes up, happens where a development's just not able to move forward. It has happened before that we've had someone return credit, you know, more than once. Unfortunately, something happened with the land or something like that after they were awarded. So we're looking forward to having that mechanism to be able to make sure that we're getting those credits or those allocations out, so that building can start as soon as possible. We're hearing from all of you that you know, we need to get the credits out in the community so that we're able to actually get construction started. So that's our goal with those. Did anybody have any concerns with that, or any questions or ways we could clarify the process? And again, this is on the 9% side, on specifically on this. Okay.
Sarah, I preferred the way you guys are doing it now, where it's a direct 50-50 split. I think it's nice where you can score them potentially differently, or you can, as you are doing, you know, recognizing that rural projects might have slightly different attributes. It frees you up to recognize those differences. You know, I think of even, you know, maybe with the Messners and some of their discussion around the importance of senior housing in the rural communities. I mean, whatever it is, instead of, you know, everyone trying to make it 50-50 through kind of the a more subjective balancing act, or a more challenging act, you know, you're just explicit on whatever you think the right ratio is that you're going to target, and working, you know, directly to target that. I thought it made it easier through the application process to understand, you know, where we would stand. So I appreciated that.
Thank you. That is our goal, is to try to make things as clear as possible. I think we've made some strides, but we know that nothing is ever perfect, and we can always improve. So your comments help us with that a lot. So thank you. Okay, well, we will move on to track record. Just and for the 2022-2023 QAP, we added an exhibit to be completed to send out to other housing finance agencies. We did not get the data back that we thought we would. It was not, I know it was a very cumbersome process for developers and applicants, property management groups. It was very cumbersome. And the data we got in return was not that useful. So we are going back to the drawing board on that. I do not anticipate us doing the, having you send it out again. So you can all be happy to know that at least that's going to go away. We obviously will continue to look at your track record here in Nebraska, but we're definitely going to change it up. So unless anyone has objections to that, it's more just a, just a comment to kind of let you know what our plans are with that. If you like sending that form out, I don't think that's going to be anyone, but okay. So to ensuring reasonable development costs, this is always a hot topic of conversation because this is that the points that were, it was 12 points for our efficient housing production measures, and then we went to 6 points. Again, it looks at different things like currently it uses eligible basis, and it looks at it looks at cost per unit, it looks at eligible basis per unit, it looks at low income housing tax credit per occupant, and each of those categories has a point to get to that 6 points. Since we've changed to the 6 points, we have seen that efficiency is driving is not as much of a driver of the ultimate outcome of an award as it was in the past. We've seen people or applicants have very few points in that category and still be recommended. And then we've had those that are, that get all the points and get recommended. So it's definitely given some different makeup of projects to be able to move forward instead of just focusing on efficiency. But we always know that we can improve in this. And one of the topics that have come up is, is eligible basis really the accurate number? Because you can pull things in and out of eligible basis. Should we be looking at total development costs, less land and reserve? What kind of challenge does that add with those developments that are looking for resources that have maybe federal funding sources that have Davis-Bacon or some of those other cost-cutting federal requirements that add additional costs to the project? So we would really like to hear some of your thoughts on that. We feel that it's important to have some sort of measurements in place for looking at costs and comparing costs. But at the same time, we want to find that balance. So any feedback you have on the current method and how you could see maybe a change would be useful. We'd love to hear it.
Sarah, this is Rob. I guess I would just suggest that maybe we consider upping that again. We've had so many different reports over the last 5 to 10 years that show we have an incredible shortage of units in this state, rural, urban, everywhere. And that we should, even part of the NIFA statewide housing study that just wrapped up, a portion of that is how do we be more efficient with our resources? And so being good stewards of this funds and trying to stretch them out as far as possible when we have so many units short, I think is wise for the state.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, we have a hand.
Right.
Andrew.
Yeah,
Oh, Brent.
Sarah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I like the way you have the current scoring and reducing that from 12 to 6. One of the things it's done is allow senior projects to be a little more competitive than they were in the past. Also, some of the safeguards you have put in place for the cost efficiencies, even though it's at 6 points, you still have the 1 standard deviation that eliminates, projects if their costs are out of line, even, if they're not scoring the efficiency points out there. And you also have what you're trying to get, the board has wanted you to try and leverage your funds as much as possible out there. So I think staying with the eligible basis as the cost is probably the best way to also support what the board is wanting to do with leveraging more funds into the project. If you go away to the total cost, then it really doesn't incentivize you to go out and reduce your amount of credits through getting funds that are difficult to work with out there. So I commend you for where you're at today and where you're at with what the board wants as different ways to use more leverage into the projects and your one standard deviation out there.
Thanks, Brent. I appreciate that. Anybody else?
This is Ryan Durant. I would agree with Brent's comments. I think, we should give it some more time to see if it really does, change how many housing units we produce. So I think, another 2 years and then maybe look at it and see if it makes sense to change it back.
Thanks, Ryan. Jake?
Yeah, Jake, Hoppy Development. I'm kind of in agreement. I found, and I mean, we could look at the data, but I think there were some inefficient projects that were still able to get awarded if they had really high sort of programmatic intent, so to say, or, and yet you're still, you've set up a nice tension between a project that might focus really on efficiencies and a project that might focus on some other things, and both can get awarded in the current QAP. So I think it's a nice tension that you've created, I guess, as opposed to, having to focus really on efficiency. I think previously at 12 points, you really had to be a highly efficient project to get awarded. Now you can, both types of projects can be awarded.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is Darren. Yeah, I would keep the 6 points. Less manipulation and basis, and probably makes for better projects that don't end up with gaps once they get allocated.
Darren, do you have a suggestion on how to eliminate the manipulation of basis?
That's really just a matter of what other sources of funding you can come up with to fill gaps and backing into, the basis that you think will score. I just, rather than calling it total development costs or, cost efficiencies, call it basis efficiencies, because, your costs are your costs. So while I agree that Nebraska's, because of this, has spread their tax credits over more units, how you get there, I guess, is the question. So, limiting the points, I think is a good thing. And from looking at what's been happening, I think it's sort of righting itself from what was happening a few years ago. But so I think leave it at 6 and just encourage as many other sources as possible, but be open to all other sources and try not to limit to what you would give points for there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Chris, Len, Mesner?
Yeah. Again, would agree with everybody. I think leaving it at 6, as Jake said, it allows you to focus on maybe 2 of those 3 efficiencies to where you might be able to do a different type of a project or get a little more creative, as opposed to focusing on literally the entire project has to be focused on those efficiency points when it's 12 points. I mean, that's such a huge point category that your entire application has to be driven towards that, as opposed to seeing what type of project you have, what makes sense for the project and the community you're working in, what your population is, and then, putting together the best project. And yeah, you can manipulate basis, but that can also come back and bite you later, because once you're awarded, and if you've got to go back for more, I mean, you're just going to be limited on what you can do in the future. So you you can shoot yourself by reducing bases too much just to get a couple points. And the way we are now, we don't have to do that as bad.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Oh, hey, Sarah, it's Andrew. I didn't raise my hand button, but I want to echo on that too, is some of the communities you work in, depending on how proactive they are with the IBC and different materials and stuff like that. I think it can create, if you go back up to the 12, it'll create a disadvantage to some of the communities that are looking at some of the higher IBC and energy codes and things like that versus communities in the more rural parts that haven't adopted those yet. But you get closer to Lincoln and Omaha with some of these communities that are adopting what they have, it really hurts the rural piece with the product you have to deliver. So just kind of echoing what everybody else said.
Thanks, Andrew. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, our processes and some of the processes that we changed in the last QAP was the timing of the rounds. So we went from having 2 rounds a year on the 9% side to 1 round a year. Some of that is simply because there's just not it. We did a study, found out that a lot of states many of the states in our area only do 1 round. And to be honest, with the uptick in the 4% applications, it's really made it so that we're able to kind of balance things out a little bit. But the big thing that we changed and what we worked on changing, 2022, we had a little bit of a delay in the QAP because we needed to go back and work on it a little bit more. So that round was, basically about the same time it normally was. But in 2023, we were able to make it so that those applications were awarded in October. So that allowed, so this was our 2023 credits. So we forward allocated 2023 credits at the end of 2022, which allowed a little bit more time to work through some of the other funding sources, getting to so that you could start construction sooner. Now, we've heard in other focus groups that like to see that even moved forward a little bit more. So maybe instead of October, maybe August. But we'd like to hear if you have any additional feedback about those timelines. We would probably, on the bond side, look at changing those a little as well too. But we like the idea of trying to work those schedules out so that it's advantageous to getting everything in the ground sooner, moving forward to really help solve the housing shortages we have. Any feedback would be great.
All right, Sarah, just for clarification, the plan is to do the same thing this year as where you'd have 2 rounds in 2023?
No, it would be that we'd try to get on a schedule where we'd have an award. I mean, really, we haven't made any decisions because we wanted to talk to those who are filling out the applications. But I think initially the thought process was that we'd have the 2024 application would be due and then do an award in October. And then the 2025 credits would have an application date in October, or we would do the awards in October of 2024. So we'd stay more on that October or, whatever. We'd stick one date and we'd try to hit it. If we have to move, if there's overwhelming interest to move things up, we may have to, have it just the same as we did this year for the 2024 credits and then make that move in 2025. Because sometimes timing is just difficult when it's a QAP year to fit it all in exactly how we'd like. But, that's why we really want to we don't have a lot of intentions right now, but we want to hear from you guys what would work best with your schedules and getting things done.
I think for as long as I'm unmuted, I think for us, you could, moving it forward a little earlier would probably be beneficial in terms of getting projects started and still be feasible on the application schedule. That's the challenge. We don't want to be doing it right now, I guess, but necessarily, but yeah, like September award would be helpful. I don't think they need to be awarded like in June or something in order to get that done.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that.
Sarah, this is Claire Vanderrake at Schaefer Richardson again. I'm gonna be the dumb Minnesotan on the call, but I'll be honest with you guys that the navigating the timing and schedule part for this, and I know that some things have changed on your end relative to scheduling, as you've already touched on, I think was really challenging for me. And so I guess more than I think obviously the sooner we can know that we have or do not have the funds and make adjustments and do all of that in a calendar year is preferential to every project. But I think what being like really clear and like you're trending towards of having a standardization of the application deadlines, I think would be hugely beneficial to those of us that are making critical path plans for our projects. You know, looking forward at this point to these applications that were submitted at the beginning of this year, you know, in the event that those funding applications are not awarded, then it's going to be vital for those of us who, if we do not receive awards, to be able to immediately backtrack and be like, all right, when is our next opportunity to go in for more funding and all of that. So I guess my comment's less that I care about when it happens so much as some clarity on what your expectations are and what we can do in order to track our projects and set ourselves up for success.
Thanks, Claire. I appreciate it.
Brent?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I am highly in favor of the next 2-year QAP having the 2024 credits, you know, continue to be as 2023 awarded in October, but then 2025 be awarded in August. That gives everybody plenty of time to know 2025 is going to be, you know, the application is going to be due roughly 2 months sooner. And we know that a year and a half in advance. And that August timeframe of being awarded is much more conducive to being able to get a project started come spring out there, which lets you hopefully the opportunity to bid your projects out during the winter when there's the most, it's probably the best time to go out and bid your jobs before all the subcontractors and contractors have their work already lined up for the year. So I think from a cost efficiency standpoint, awarding in August would be optimal, but I don't know, with the timing of getting the QAP done, I think that should just be for 2025, and 2024 should stay the same as this current year.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely want to make sure everyone has enough time to prepare their applications for 2024 credits. We don't want to rush everyone and not, and that's really important to us. So any major change would have to occur in 2025, with the idea that if that really worked and we didn't have any unintended consequences that came up that we, you know, maybe didn't all think of, then we would want to get in a same schedule every year. So it would just be August every year then. So that's our goal. We've just been tweaking it to try to get to where we think will work the best for everyone. So thank you for that feedback.
I guess just one other thought on that, Sarah, too, is since you do tie the DED app with the NIFA app, is to make sure that changing that timing will also work on the home or trust funds also.
Yep, we actually we were just needing to talk about talk about those dates and things, and the possibilities before this meeting, and we'll meet after. So yep, they're an CED folks are an active part of our timeline. Meredith?
Hey, thank you. This is again, only one other type of funding and specific to the city of Omaha, but Front Porches Cycles will be on February 1st through March 1st in terms of when our applications are open, February 1st to March 1st, and then again, August 1st to September 1st. So folks having knowledge of their award in August would be really helpful for our cycles as well, so that people know whether or not they have them before September 1st and could apply based on that knowledge.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Threshold, we made some pretty drastic changes in threshold from prior years, where we used to assign points to the threshold items. It was suggested, why are you giving points for something you're requiring? So we changed that. One of the challenges we're still having though is that we have applications not meeting thresholds for a variety of reasons. You know, we're going to make some language corrections to make sure that we're really clear about the requirements of documents and things like that. But we'd really like to hear, is there, you know, we've said before, you know, we don't need to do threshold, and I know everyone's like, no, we want threshold. But is there any suggestions to how, as practitioners, we could make that threshold process work better for you, or any suggestions at all regarding threshold? As it is right now, the way threshold works is that when you submit your application, your threshold application, we only look at the required threshold items, which are exhibit 1 through 20, and then in the 20 is just if you have DED funding sources. It's 10 through 20 is DED sources, so 1 through 9 is required NIFA and / DED information. And then exhibit 100 through 116 are what we look at for threshold. Again, those are not scoring items. They're just things that you have to have in place. It's things like site control, financing commitments, things like that. What happens now is we review those items, and then even when you resubmit, we review them again. So we're reviewing them twice. Which we're fine with doing. Again, our goal is we do not want to have projects not meeting threshold, but at the same time, finding that balance of, you know, it's difficult to say, oh, okay, this one, in essence, this is okay, and make it subjective. We don't want that. We very much have prided ourselves on having, a process that's pretty black and white. So we want to continue with that, but we want more people to meet threshold. So any suggestions you have on that, we would love to hear them. If you don't want to talk about them now, you can always shoot me an email. That's fine as well.
Jake, Hoppy, we've certainly appreciated the opportunity to get your threshold feedback, and there's just enough variety in some of the projects where, things, getting your feedback is very helpful in certain circumstances. So, but I don't have a particular comment on how to improve it. I do prefer, I think, given that threshold is threshold, kind of the idea that you don't necessarily get points for that has made sense to me. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we are really looking to what some of our sister HFAs are doing in this regard. So we're thinking hard about this, and we don't have anything concrete to bring to you right now, but we know we're not going to get rid of a threshold review process. We've heard loud and clear that you don't want that to go away. So we're going to really research on how we can improve it, just to again guarantee that we have as many applications that we're able to review and that can move forward as possible. Well, any further discussions? I mean, I know we didn't bring, we kind of had our specific items we wanted to talk about and touch on to get your feedback on, but is there anything else you would like to bring up that would be valuable for us to go back, look at, and look at for the 24-25 QAP? Chris.
I just want to revisit the leverage and collaboration and make sure everybody is kind of on board on that. Last meeting, we talked more about, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think I applaud being able to go out and bring other funds and stretch our credit allocation out as far as possible. The 5% minimum in order to get any points is way too high. You know, you're looking at over on a $6 million project, you're over $300,000 just to get that 1 point, where you have, especially in the rural areas, you know, some housing authorities or nonprofits can put in $100,000 or 150 and you don't get anything. So if we can revisit, or at least you guys can take a look at spreading that scale out a little bit, and giving some points for, you know, less than 5%. And, you know, I don't have a problem going higher than 10%. So just want to make sure we can drive that initial threshold number below 5%.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else?
Sarah, this is Rob. I just wanted to bring up something about the rent AMI targeting. A couple of years ago, we switched to a basically 10% at one level, 40% another. So basically, you have 50% of your units at or below 50%, and then the remaining units are at 60%. Prior, when we used basically the overall affordable unit AMI targeting, most people were averaging like 40 to 42%. And so I guess I just wanted to run through some quick math here of what the difference is between 40% AMI rents and 60% AMI rents, and what that does to a household budget at. And I used Douglas County as an example, a 3-person household, income is around 51,000, the 60% limit. The difference between 40% AMI and 60% AMI rents is about $500 a month. You take that times 12 months, that's about $6,000 a year for a family making 51,000, and that's truly impactful to them negatively. And so I guess I would recommend going back to the overall AMI targeting just to make it more affordable for the residents. And I mean, it's an 11% increase going from the 50% below AMI to the 60% AMI rent units. And that's meaningful for a family of 3 making $50,000.
Thanks, Rob. Part of the reason we moved to that change is because of the average income set aside that was introduced. You know, I think we haven't seen a ton of that used yet, but now that we have the IRS guidance and we'll be coming out with some clarifications about that process. Our previous way we did the numbers made it difficult for anyone to be able to do that income averaging. And there's been a lot of conversation about that, but I think that the idea behind that income averaging is we'll be able to do some deeper targeting to hit that 20%, 20%, 30% levels, and then have some higher levels. So our change had to do with not dissuading people to, we want them to be able to use income averaging to hit a variety of levels. But we'll definitely take a look at that and run some numbers. We still do internally when we do our underwriting, run the average, what the actual, even though they're targeting their targeting rents are still, like you said, they're averaging, you're seeing them average back to 50%. We're still seeing like overall rents on applications still low. We still do track that overall number. So we'll make sure to take a look at that and really see where it's trending. I appreciate that comment. Thank you. Anyone else?
There, I'll go back to support services. I didn't speak on that earlier. I think you probably heard a lot, maybe some of these other calls about that. But it is a challenge. And what I thought was interesting, you mentioned providing opportunities that are less cost or free support service opportunities. And we've been having a conversation internally about how maybe we should just sort of give in and just opt for some of the paid services, because I get so much feedback on the support service and compliance side, that just how challenging it is to inherit some of these things from bygone years. And I think if we're struggling with it, and we have so many community partnerships and such strong partnerships and support service staff on permanent social workers on staff and all of those things, I imagine it's a challenge for other people. We found it very difficult to get people to take advantage of things and to get partners to chronicle those and record keeping and to comply. And so I found myself in this situation where maybe we do just take the cost and simplify it and just pay to clean people's units every year, something like that, because the partnership part of this and the social service aspect of it is frankly a challenge. And I think it's just from our perspective, if we can speak to that, I think pretty sincerely as somebody who will do it, whether or not we get points for it. But the compliance side of it is really challenging. And then one other aspect that I thought about it, the reason why I spoke up is as I'm thinking about what are the things that are impactful, that are meaningful. And I think I hear a lot of challenge that maybe housing providers are not the most, or our skill sets maybe are not the most suited for getting this kind of support, wraparound services and those things. And I think that's probably true. And I think that you see a lot of times folks that access help are a lot of times those folks that don't necessarily need it. And the people who really do need it are the people who are not taking advantage of things. And that's frustrating and difficult and challenging. And what I've come to start to ponder on that is that maybe there's opportunities. Maybe the more effective thing is for us to think less about what we can do to help people and think more about how we can do less harm as an industry, which I think is possibly difficult for us to acknowledge. But in our position, you can do a lot of disruption in a person's life. And just as an example, something I've been thinking about that I wish we had more capacity to explore and spend time on, but is kind of distracted by the time we spend on some of these support services, is things like debt collection. When somebody moves out, you have a termination in a negative situation, you have rent to collect, and you have damages and fees, and you follow the book and do all of that, and end up where you end up is you'll send somebody to collections. And collections is a very grueling and in a lot of ways exploitive and damaging process. How can we as an industry explore more humane ways to still hold people accountable for dollars on without supporting an industry that is so exploitive and damaging? There's all kinds of avenues like that in the property management landlord industry that I think I would be interested in seeing, just as an idea over the years, if we could implement more of that kind of exploration. And frankly, less support services, or do less harm. But we are kind of stuck in this manpower hole of applying with a lot of services and trying to get people to access healthcare and classes and things where I've found I would love to be able to take some of those hours and direct them to more innovative exploratory processes. So anything we could do to explore, support that approach would be useful. So that's my suggestion, kind of long-term suggestion, but I guess I just want to maybe echo what I'm guessing has been a comment you've heard over the years, that support services are it's hard to quantify and really know the value people are getting out of relative to the amount of hours and energy we're putting into them.
Thank you. And if you have specific ideas or a specific program specifically with the debt collection or things like that, we'd love to hear about it. We try to stay on top of things, but as you know, and everyone knows right now, there's not enough hours in the day. So that we'd love to hear specific ideas, because you're right. There are many different ways to look at something like that. So thanks, Matthew. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll absolutely let you know as I explore that one.
Anyone else? Other topics? Okay. Well, we know that you're all extremely busy, so thank you for taking time out of your day to come and offer comments, provide suggestions, talk about your challenges. Really, this is what we do share all of these notes with the board. All of these recordings are available on our website. So if you weren't able to attend the first two focus groups, you can definitely hop on and watch them. But again, this is extremely valuable for us and our process, and we get a lot out of this. So thank you for all of you taking your time to participate, and we appreciate it. Again, please feel free to reach out, emails are on the website, or most of you have our email addresses. But one more chance, anybody else have anything before we move on? Okay, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it, and look forward to rolling out working with DED and rolling out some changes here soon. So keep an eye out. And if you're not signed up on for our NIFA newsletter, specifically in the developer category, please go to our website and sign up to get the most up-to-date information on the QAP. Thanks. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Sarah.